Welcome into the first episode, Brian, first episode of the Star Wars Newsnet timeline show. So I'll let Brian introduce himself here in a second, but here we go. Just a quick rundown of what this show is going to be. So there is so much Star Wars content that is out there, and sometimes it's hard to know where to find it. Sometimes it's hard to even keep up with everything. It's impossible. And so this show is basically going to be a way for you to, see what is going on in chronological order in the entire timeline. And Brian's a timeline guru, so
I
he's
love it.
actually perfect for this show. And so today we're starting as far back as we can in the timeline, which would be 382 BBY. And we're going to discuss just a quick short story. It's called The Queen's Bloom from the Tales of Light and Life short anthology book that takes place for the High Republic. So this short story is a High Republic story. It takes place in Phase 2, 382 BBY. It got released last September in 2023. And this is the earliest Star Wars story that we have. Of course, we have characters that have appeared earlier, at least in the Timelines book. We know that Hu Yang appears at some point 10,000, 25,000 years ago, whatever it is. And so I'm sure the Dawn of the Jedi movie that Mangold is doing, takes place well before 382 BBY. And we'll have more stories that come before this at some point. But right now, 382 BBY is the earliest story-ish of that we have. And so, Brian, quick, just introduce yourself, your timeline guru, get people familiar with some of our graphics down the bottom that you put together, and then we'll dive into the Queen's Bloom.
Fair enough. Let's do this. Let's break this down real quick. So my name is Brian Miller. For those of you who are tuning in for the first time, I run my own show called the Star Wars Canon Podcast. Keep up on all things canon. Big surprise there. And we're also working on a website. It is starwarscanon.net. You guys can actually go check it out right now, where every single piece is in chronological order and sorted by medium and by era. Disney recently put out these separate eras that they're wanting to kind of dabble in, and these official titles to them finally. So that's what we're breaking everything down by. And so, like Tyler said, this first story is it's as far back as we can go at the moment. It's going to be a High Republic short story. And when we start getting into the Dawn of the Jedi and stuff like that, and when we start getting into new stuff that's coming out, before or way after where we're at in the timeline, we'll probably take a break from the timeline, go talk about the new stuff, kind of give our thoughts and a rundown on the new stuff, and then we'll go back to working on the timeline and slowly working our way through, tediously working our way through, because there's so much to it. People don't realize that everybody talks about how the Legends universe had so much content to it and had 200 and some novels and everything. We're getting up there on novels and comics with canon, and it's getting ridiculous almost, to the point where it's tedious keeping the timeline together. So Tyler and I got together. We decided we were going to start this show and just kind of go through and talk about each thing individually. For people who don't really have time to sit down and read everything, or don't really have access to everything, because I know certain people in certain countries don't have access to every piece of canon and everything.
Right.
I know Tyler's got stuff I don't have, and I've got stuff Tyler doesn't have right now. We're going to have to network on it and get it. But I think this is going to be a lot of fun. Now, like he said something about the graphics at the bottom. Whichever one is not grayed out, that's the era we're on. So I just figured it'd be kind of fun to have a little visual, for the era. And we're going to be in High Republic for quite a while.
We'll be here for a while, because that's where most of the early timeline stuff takes place. And I just want to add on, it's just a great way here that you can keep up with, okay, what are some of the important events that are taking place? And it's going to go a little deeper than just, say, if you got the Star Wars Timelines book and it kind of just talks to you about the key points. Here, you'll kind of get to know some of the characters, things like that. If you don't want to go read, just a ton of information about it, here we'll just kind of give you a quick synopsis of what's going on in these different years. And that way, it's just nice to have a place where you can go and over time be like, all right, I would like to know what's going on before, the Skywalker saga begins. Oh, here's just a list of shows that give me those things and the content that's come out for those time periods. So that's kind of the gist of the show. So ready to get into the Queen's Bloom.
I'm ready, man. And something else that'd be kind of fun to do is, we can kind of group things by character too, because some of these short stories, from, let's say, like from this Tales of Light and Life, for example, there's a Vernestra Rowe story. We could
Right.
end up talking about, hey, you want Vernestra Rowe, you can read this and this,
Hmm.
to get her whole story one out. So I think it'd be a lot of fun to deep dive into this, and especially for me, it's been a while since I've read some of this stuff. It'd be kind of cool to go back and recap it again and get a refresher on it. So yeah, let's get into it, man.
Absolutely. So, The Queen's Bloom came out last September. Zoraida Cordova is the author. She is, kind of dipping her toes into phase two of the High Republic. There she is right there. And honestly, this was one of my favorite short stories in the book. For those of you who might be unfamiliar with the High Republic, the main character in this one is Axel Greylark. So, Axel is kind of the Prince of Coruscant. They call him. As you look at the cape, he's like Lando. He's like a mixture of Lando and Han, like incarnate for the High Republic, if
Right.
that makes sense. His parents are royalty essentially for the Coruscant elite. Both of his parents are senators. His mom goes on to be the chancellor of the Republic, and there she is, Keon Greylark, right there. His father is Lexer Greylark. I don't think they have concept art
No, I
for
couldn't
Lexer
find anything
Greylark.
on him.
And so interesting though, at the time they had this dual chancellor system. So there you see Chancellor Malo, along with Chancellor Greylark. And so Axel is this rebel. He is, like I said, he's like this mixture of Han. He's this mixture of Lando. And this book takes place before some of the chaos that ensues his life in a more dramatic way. He's just simply a student at university getting into trouble and finds himself in a little bit more trouble than he would like. So, Brian, real quick, just give me your quick take on Axel as a character. Like, is he someone that you are drawn to in this phase? He's probably my favorite character from phase two, personally. I'm just
Hmm.
curious what you think.
I love him. I think he's great. He's a very complex character. Especially from this short story on, where you find out where he ends up by the end of this phase. He's got a very complex character
Mhm.
path, and so there's a lot of development there with him also. I've really enjoyed everything with him. When I picked up Tales of Light and Life and I opened that first story and I realized it was an Axel Greylark story, I love, especially with the first line, Axel Greylark is dying. And I was like, oh, this is going to be great. And just
Right.
that whole first chapter had me hooked into Axel Greylark, and I loved
Mhm.
him so much. Um, he's the prankster at school, and he's the troublemaker running around with the wrong crowd, which kind of foreshadows him, what happens later on with,
Mhm.
the Path of the Open Hand, which we'll get into much later. But no, I've really enjoyed his character arc. And I really like what they did with him. I'm glad that
So,
not everybody got a really happy ending.
right. Something that's
Just
fascinating
saying.
with him. His arc is fantastic
It
from start
is.
to finish. This story, so essentially the synopsis is he's faking illness to get out of class yet again. So that way he can skip off, hang out with his friend Laylee, who he has this big crush on, and him, Laylee, and his nemesis basically are going to witness this big nature event that's taking place. All of the galaxy's elite have gathered to witness this event, including Axel's family. And of course, when all the rich people are gathered, it's a prime opportunity for thieves to enter into the scene. And so Axel and his friends enter into a room. They get mixed up with the band of thieves that is trying to steal from all of the rich. Definitely not give it back to the poor, though. This is not a Robin Hood situation that we are seeing. So Axel got a little bit more than he bargained for. But ultimately, Layla, his love interest, is actually with those thieves, betrays him, and it's kind of an early like foreshadowing because at the end of this story he has this conversation with his father where his father and him have a very special bond, and at the end Axel is determined and convinced that he is going to be better than what he has been. He's going to push
Right.
harder, push higher, be living up to the name Greylark, live up to his I guess what is expected of him. And while that seems like an optimistic ending, like this character has this newfound purpose, is actually kind of a tragic optimism because we know that his father's going to die in just a short few months after this,
Very short.
and
Yeah.
that is going to be the tipping point for that sets him from on the path of success to what launches him even further into kind of the depravity and just unholiness
The
chaos
the
that
the
ensues
underworld, the dark
afterwards.
underworld.
Yes.
Yeah.
So let's get into a couple things Axel Greylark from this. That's kind of the snub. So Axel Greylark, this is a list of pranks that he has pulled so far at University, Brian.
Love it.
Lewd drawings in the atrium.
Mm-hmm.
He let loose the Minox from the laboratory.
God.
Flooded the bathrooms in the West Tower dorms. Like, who hasn't? Who hasn't?
Right. Oh yeah.
And he has managed to fake illnesses on command, racking up 30 excused illnesses from the nurse droids on campus, much to the chagrin of the dean of the school.
God.
This time he got out of it by he shoved 3 of like the hottest peppers in the galaxy into his mouth at the same time. And so the nurse droid kept taking his temperature, and he could fake having some flu for a little bit because his temperature was so high. But the dean finally gave in, and Axel was like, well, thank goodness he didn't check my temperature one more time. It was about to fail. And what was hilarious is that he talks about how he had been trying to perfect this art of faking the flu for a while. And so, Brian, I have to ask, have you ever been a prankster? Are you drawn to this lifestyle?
No idea. Dude, you have no idea. So when I was in high school, for me, April Fool's Day is second Christmas. To the point where when I was just getting out of high school, I was working at a car wash at the time. My boss told me not to come in because she didn't want to deal with me on April Fool's Day. It's bad. No, I've done stuff like, oh God, I tormented my sister one time. I put grape Kool-Aid mix in the shower head, screwed it back on, and let her take a shower to get ready for work. And then she got coated blue. She looked like the Blueberry Girl off of Willy Wonka and stuff. So stained her skin for like a week. My dad thought it was great. My mother was pissed. I can relate to this. I faked sick so many times to get out of school when I was younger. It was ridiculous. So
I'm not much of a trickster personally.
Character.
I'm like not much of a prankster guy. The only thing I'm gonna do this year is for my students. I did it last year. Is I just put on April Fool's Day. I just put a link in their Canvas drive, and it just says link for extra credit assignment, and it's just gonna be a video of me like, hey, how's it going? You thought.
Sleek. Matter of fact, just today, real quick, I actually signed my buddy up to get a visit from the Jehovah's Witnesses just today, and they should be there like within the week. So I'm waiting to hear the text from him of what did you do
to the poor Jehovah's Witnesses. You're setting them up for failure. And so, okay, so Axel he's not just this guy. He has some redeeming qualities. He's described as a powerful orator in class. He's always been a natural speaker. He can get people on his side. I mean, just look at the concept art here. Like, look, he's very regal. He's a good-looking guy. His
dapper
charm is like something that there. It's just so akin to Han and Lando. Like, you know, he has got the cape going on. He can charm. He's the scoundrel, but he's the lovable scoundrel, right?
Yeah.
So he's orator. He has top marks in school, and he is the center striker in graph ball, whatever graph ball is. I would probably love to watch a game of graph ball. So did you catch the Gela or Gela? Is it Gela or Gela for
the Gellan? I think it's I always pronounce it Gela.
Okay.
Yeah.
So is it the Gellan reference in the book, in the story? Did you catch that?
Where was it?
Okay, so Axel is...
Full disclosure, it's been like 3 weeks since I read this story.
Okay.
So
for those of you who aren't aware, Gellan, she is a main character in Phase 2 of the High Republic. She is essentially probably the main Jedi for the adult novels of Phase 2. Fantastic character. Her and Axel end up having this very complex relationship in later novels. And so they don't mention her by name or anything. But it does say when he's weaving through the crowd, he's weaving through the crowd, he bumps into a young Jedi with a Padawan braid that has twin lightsabers, and it's described, we know that's her. And he says, like, he looks at her and he's like, interesting. Like, and then he keeps going. So what did you think of, so basically Axel and this girl named Laylee, who is from a family of pirates. She is from a crime family and has really been talking to him about how much she wants to get out of the crime business. She doesn't want to be tied to her family name. And he's smitten over this girl. Absolutely head over heels. If she asked him to jump over a cliff, he would. Okay. Plans this whole thing out to get him to use his name to get them into this fancy building so she can meet up with the other thieves and get them to steal everything. At the end, when he finds out that she has betrayed him, she tells him, "You'll soon learn you're just like me. You're never going to live up to your family name. You're going to have to become just like me." And he, in a way, believes her. He,
Yeah.
he believes that lie. It's not until after his father and him have that conversation he believes he could be different. But do you think later on in Axel's life, this event right here with Laylee specifically, this betrayal and her words, how much do you think that haunts him or he reflects on that, years down the line?
I think quite a bit. He's not a very trusting person for the rest of his, his time in the High Republic, and even in his time with, in the underworld, and all these gambling debts that he's got and these scams that he has going
Mhm.
on, and everything. He doesn't trust anybody, and that's part of the reason why his relationship was so strained with Gela. And
Right.
so she even had issues trusting because of him. Like, it was
Mhm.
just wild later on. So yeah, I think that was I you know, before this story came out, we were thinking that his father's death was the tipping point. And I would go as far as to say this was like the first crack in the armor to
Right.
make him, not want to be a traditional Greylark, and
Mhm.
part of the family and everything. So yeah, I think this had a lot to do with it.
It was like the first little, like, cut, the first little, like, chink in the armor, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then the conversation with the father is like a patchwork. It heals it,
Yeah. Yeah.
but it doesn't offer any permanent protection, especially given
Band-aid
how
on a
quick it
bullet hole.
happens
Yeah.
because his father dies this same year. It's not
Yeah.
much longer that him and his
Just a
father
couple
go on
months.
a
Yeah.
like a mercy mission. It's a trap, and his father dies. And it's just so sudden. The betrayal happens, his father dies, and that's when everything falls apart because his mother, Keong, and him have a very difficult relationship. The connection between him and his mother is not nearly as seamless as with him and his father. And that plays a large part in his life because there's always this tug and pull with the two of them. Axel wants something out of his mother. He's expecting her to do the opposite of what he's hoping for. And Keong is trying to figure out how to balance being chancellor of the galaxy and the mother to a troubled son. And that's just they have a great relationship, and I love the way
Oh
their
yeah.
arc ends. So Axel meets someone for the first time that may
Yes.
just be a massively important figure later on. So let's put her up there, please, Mr. Bryan. So he runs into the mother of the path of the open hand. Now, I'm unsure as of this time, maybe you're aware. So the path is certainly in operation.
Yes.
Of course, in the book, the Twi'lek that is with her at the time refers to her as like Alicia, which is her
Yeah.
actual
Elite.
name, and
Yeah.
not the mother.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess my question to you is: we can only speculate a little bit of what the path looks like at this time, because it is a few years removed from where we're actually going to
Right.
be. So I'm curious: do you think that the mother has established this ironclad hold on the path of the open hand at this point, or do you think it's open? And before I'll give you a moment to think about that for a second, like how firm her hold is and how much of a reverend figure she is. And I'll just explain what the path of the open hand is real quick. So the path of the open hand, for those who aren't aware, is basically this cult of anti-force users. They believe in the force being there. They believe that the force exists, but they're the antithesis of the Jedi. They it's kind of crazy. They think that anytime someone uses the force, that it is like if I had a jar of M&Ms, I took them out, put them somewhere else. I have taken something away here. So anytime I use the force, I'm taking the force away from someone or something else in the galaxy. So for instance, if a Jedi were to use the force to stop a flood that's coming in, they're like, oh my gosh, somewhere in the galaxy, you just killed someone because you sucked the life force out of something. That's what they believe. So obviously, the path and the Jedi are, in a sense, like mortal enemies. And the Jedi obviously don't view it that way, but the path, in a large part, do. And it makes for this just really interesting dynamic between path members and the Jedi that we see later on. And the mother would be the leader of this group. So, Brian, do
Mm-hmm.
you think right now at this time she is the reverend, like all powerful figure in the path, or is it still kind of that shared leadership that we're seeing of the path? Because it does change. There is a change.
It does. I think at this point she's well on her way of getting her claws into everybody.
Hmm.
I think, and I don't want to give too much away, you know, because as we go through phase 2, you know, more and more layers of her get peeled back, and you start to see more and more of her, and I really more of who she actually is, and then you got, you
Right.
know, find out who she is later on, and it's awesome, right? So, but I think at this point, yes, she's there, because it even talks about it in this short story how the crew are looking at her, you know, like it's the mother, you know, and throughout the
Right.
all of phase 2, people look at her and they're just enamored with her and they just want to do what she says, you know, they just want to, she has that air of confidence about her. She has that kind of that quality that to just compel people to do what she wants them to do.
Absolutely.
And so I think at this point I think she's further. I think she's got her claws deeper into them than they realize,
Hmm.
and I think the damage is done. Like I know
Hmm.
it's she's not allowing her true self to be seen as much as she
Right.
does later on. But at this point, she's just that sweet. Hey, we're gonna do this mission. You know, we're gonna do this. And are you sure you want to do that? Let's do this. You know. And so yeah, I think she's easily working her way into the ranks at this point. Um, because we really don't have a story about how she came to the path. You know,
Right.
it's just kind of
She's
she's
just in
there.
charge. She's just
Right.
there. So I
Right.
wrote down two quotes from it that she has that I thought were interesting. One was when they were talking about why they're stealing the jewels, and they're talking about this should clear us with the huts, and she's like, barely.
Mhm.
So we know at the time when we first see them in some of the later novels that they have a bountiful treasure trove of assets and a bountiful credit supply. They're well off, and they've been
Mhm.
spending. So I'm curious if this is more right at the tipping point of when they start accumulating their wealth, because it
Right.
seems like they're in debt with the huts to some degree. So I'm wondering, it's like, is this the early stages of the dark side of the path where they're
Mhm.
working with the huts, they're doing those things? And then the second one was the haunting line that she gives to Axel before she leaves, where she just says, "I'm admiring your bravery and your chaos." And
Mhm.
that is the coined phrase that she, dubs for
That's his
him
nickname
later
for her.
on.
Yeah.
Is
Yeah.
chaos. And so that was interesting that that was the first time when we got that reference. So
Mhm.
any really after that, him and his father share that conversation at the end where he kind of takes the pressure off of him, and he says, all I need you to be is my son. It's all you got to be. And
Yeah.
Axel is just so confident and really just eager to prove himself.
Mhm.
And it just makes you so frustrated because he is that character that you are constantly cheering for, and he's going to let you down. But every
Yeah.
time he tries to turn around, you're like, he's going to do it this time. Like
Yeah.
this is the moment. And then he makes the wrong choice.
Later on in phase 2, there's several moments like that. There are several moments where you're like, "Oh, he's actually turning a new never mind." It's like
No, he's not.
it just goes off the deep end. Um, but yeah, no, he's a great character, and
Mhm.
I really like what they've done. And you know what? There's different perspectives on this story. Whether you've read the other phase 2 stuff first and then read this kind of because this came out after
Mhm.
some of the we were like halfway through phase 2. So this is kind of a prequel story if you've already read that
This
stuff.
came out after everything from phase 2 was published. This
Right.
was like this book was considered the opening of soft launch of phase 3, because
Right.
there's like two stories at the end that have phase 3 content.
Yes. Yeah. So it's I read this after, you know, getting through phase 2 and then I, you know, went back and read this. So it was kind of a cool prequel story if you're reading them chronologically. I think this is a great jumping off point for the character. Pay attention to him. Pay attention to the little things that happen to him because they do end up mattering in the long run.
Mhm. Yes, it is a great launching point. If you don't want to know any of the backstory, you can just pick this short story and then go in. You're gonna have a very different thought process of what
Mhm.
Axel's probably up to by the time you catch up to him in Convergence. So that's Queen's Blue. Brian, do you want to introduce what our show will be next week? See, these will be pretty quick. Next week we'll probably have a
Let me
little
look.
bit more to chew on.
Let me look here real quick. So we're gonna be doing the show weekly. Um, we're not sure exactly what day it's gonna be coming out. If you guys are watching it, you know what day it's coming out. You know before we do at this point. But we're gonna end up putting this out weekly and start working our way through the canon. The next one we're gonna be doing is the novel Path of
Path
Deceit
of
by
Deceit.
Justina
Yep.
Ireland and Tessa Gratton.
That I'm excited for that one. It's a really
Great
fun
novel.
one. I got to review that for Star Wars Newsnet. I got the early copy and everything from the publishing, and it was
So
it's
jealous.
beautiful cover too. Beautiful cover
Oh, it
too.
is. Great book.
So,
Great book.
excited. We're excited to talk about that. My boy Kevmo getting Martyr Row. We're
Oh,
gonna get into
yeah.
we're gonna get in some good characters here. So thanks
That's
for
right.
tuning in. We will see you later on. Brian, real quick, where just plug your stuff again real quick before we get out of
You
here.
guys can find me at my show, the Star Wars Canon Podcast. You guys can find me on Star Wars Newsnet Live every Thursday night with this guy right here. And matter of fact, we're getting ready to go live here in just a little bit. For those of you who don't know when we're recording this, no mystery. No, we're going live here in just a little bit. So tune in there, and you guys can find me right here talking about Star Wars canon, man.
Awesome. Thanks for joining us for episode 1 of the Star Wars Newsnet Timeline Show. This was 382 BBY talking about Queen's Bloom. My name's Tyler. You can follow me on Twitter at TyBrad5. I'm really excited for MegaCon Orlando next week. I'm going to be there going to all the different Star Wars panels and stuff. You'll probably catch me live tweeting some of those and putting some stuff on Instagram. I'm so excited. I've never been to a big nerd convention before. This is like my first one. So I'm excited. I took 2 days off of school. I got a sub coming in. It's going to be great. You can catch me on Star Wars Newsnet Live, as Brian said, with him every Thursday night. I'll be putting out some different shorts. You can catch my Bad Batch predictions short that's out there right now. I'll have some new High Republic videos coming out as well. That'll do it for this time. And I guess since we're on High Republic right now, we should end with For Light and Life.
Life. Yep. Have a good one, guys.
See ya.